All right, Garry, Chief Global Brand Officer, you took over here in the UFC a few years ago. You've got a rich history here in Manchester. Here we are, we've got about 5,000 people are going to pack the seats around us for a weigh-in event as a Mancunian fighter comes home to defend his world title. How special is this for the UK and for the city of Manchester?
Well, you know, Manchester continues to grow and build. I mean, it's an economic regeneration story that's happened over the last 10-15 years that's unequaled anywhere in the United Kingdom. So sport sort of defines the city. You know, obviously the Commonwealth Games way back in 2002, you know, the Manchester City growth and development, which I was proudly involved with, Manchester United, one of the world's greatest football teams, and then you start to add in, you know, other great events like the defence of a world title from a guy from Manchester with the fastest growing sport in the world. It's a wonderful story. You know, Manchester's sort of the heart of sport, I always think.
And given that Michael Bisping won the world title, he's held his beer from Manchester. He's actually just up the road, but it's close enough. Given what happened with Ricky Hatton here and the sheer fighting passion in Manchester and the success of the Through the Night show when he fought Costa June, how much thought process went into holding this event, or was it just a no-brainer once Bisping got the belt?
No, we have a team of people here based in London and led by a guy, James Elliott, who runs our business here. You know, we've got 15-20 people managing the whole of the European region, and you know, there's been an upsurge in MMA fighting, and particularly the UFC, whether it's television broadcast, whether it's commercial interest, ticket sales. This event here in Manchester sold out very, very quickly, probably the quickest we've ever sold an event, and the team do a great job, you know, and I always think that, you know, the business, the brand needs to be on the ground. They've done a great job of doing that, and you know, the fighters are wonderful. We've got 600 fighters. Anytime you can find a local guy who's a local hero defending his world title in his hometown, there's a lot of passion for that.
And as I say, even in the relatively short space of time that you've been involved with the UFC, we've seen exponential growth in the sport. We've got new ownership now with the UFC. The sport continues to expand internationally, particularly here in Europe, Middle East and Africa. What's the next big step for the UFC? Need to further international expansion? What can we expect to see the next 12, 24 months? Especially
well, you know, we're in 144 countries. We broadcast in 28 languages. Our television content is available in over 1 billion households. You know, we have Twitter followers in excess of 15 million. You know, you could always say, well, that's a lot. There's still a lot more to come. You know, the US is our primary market. Brazil's a big market for us. Canada's a big market for us. But Europe has continued to grow. We're not even opened up in Russia. Never had an event in Russia. And you look at, you know, Khabib's one of the big fighters coming out of Russia. There's a lot of talent there. You start to look at China. You start to look at the Asian markets. You know, like any other global business, there's nothing wrong with continuing your international growth. I have said on numerous occasions that eventually the overseas business will be bigger than the US business, which is the epicenter where it all started. But then I was the guy that said that Manchester City was going to be one of the greatest football clubs in the world, and you know, that's yet to be determined, but it's all part of having that vision, having that passion, commitment, and knowing that you can get there and figuring out a way to get there. And I think we're on the UFC's on a pretty good track.
And you mentioned Manchester City. You obviously came from the world of professional football, which is the biggest mainstream sport on the planet. Joining the UFC, I'm sure there are people who would have been very excited if you jumped across. And I'm sure there might have been one or two who were like, Garry, are you sure you know what you're doing here? You know, is this sport really going to get that big? When you see something like this and you see the growth of the sport and the rise of people like Conor McGregor and Ronda Rousey and people like this, how much does that vindicate your decision to sort of move across and get involved, and how excited does it make you feel for the future for the sport here?
Well, I never had any doubt really, because Dana White, as the leader of the business, is himself a visionary. he's truly compassionate. You know, he's truly a passionate individual about his sport. He loves his sport. But the insight is very simple. The insight is that the greatest athletes in the world aspire to be either as fit physically, as fit mentally, or just as committed or as passionate about their sport as these guys are about the combat sport of MMA. And so for me it was really very simple. You know, when I was at Manchester City, footballers wanted to be MMA fighters, NFL players want to be MMA fighters, but they just know that there's a very different level. And I've always said that MMA fighting is sort of above all else in the athlete world. So the insight was very simple. You have to follow where you think the opportunities are in the world, and this sport has changed the landscape of sport forever. We have women fighter, you know, compelling stories, which are Ronda Rousey, whether it's Joanna out of Poland. They're compelling stories. Not many sports in the world are being watched by the males of the female version, and so I think this is very unique. We've got a great story. The story continues to be told, and I think there's lots of opportunities still to come. So I think this is the beginning of a lot more.
And a huge event here. This is arguably the biggest UFC event we've ever had in the UK. It's being held in the middle of the night to accommodate the US pay-per-view market. Now obviously the UFC are looking to expand and grow, and obviously the new investors are going to eventually look to get some return on that huge investment they've put in. Do you think, or how far away do you think we might be from being able to have events of this scale being held on this side of the pond at prime time, where we've got a situation where a British world champion or a big international world champion is headlining what you would call a pay-per-view level card at local time in the UK, because that to me would seem to be like the next progression, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and we've seen examples of that. You know, Ronda fought in Melbourne, and that event started very early in the morning, and everybody in Melbourne was you know, engaged in that and enjoyed that. But we have to remember that when you're in a global sport, it's very interesting how you have to try and manage your content. You could look at the English Premier League, you could look at the NFL. But they all face the same problems. The problems are, where is it going to create the most impact and at what point? And then you have to balance out, and are the local fans going to be interested? So we could easily have put this event on at pay-per-view, but nobody showed up for the event. But we sold out in 6 minutes. We have a passionate audience in Manchester. We have a passionate MMA audience, and particularly here in the UK. We have a passionate American audience that want to see the event live on pay-per-view. So you have to try and meet everybody's needs, but that's no different to any other sport.
Absolutely. And the last one, and I appreciate the time, thank you. When you take your seat in the arena for fight night, what are you most looking forward to when you actually sit yourself down for a big event? In what is your home country, even though you're based out in Vegas now? This is home for you. And,
yeah, it's you know, I came here in 2012. We set about growing and developing the business here, but I always like to look back through the lens of the founder. And you know, in the arena on that night, I'll be sitting next to Dana, and you know, nobody has done what Dana has done in the short time that we've had this business. And I always think to myself, you know, and I always say this to Dana, can you believe what you've created? And I think tonight, not only will I be passionate about the event and what it delivers, but I think it's also a great thing for somebody from South Boston, moved to Las Vegas, and 16 years later, the single biggest sports deal in the world, he's still involved, he's still at the helm, he's still at the forefront of it, and whoever would have had that vision other than Dana White.
Yeah, great stuff. It's going to be a huge event. Hope you enjoy it, hope it all goes really well, and thanks for chatting to us.
Great to speak to you.